Hi guys, today's video is actually a viewer request. I got a comment on one of my videos in my last ranking video being like, hey, you should do a video ranking all of your all shimmer palettes. And I was like, you know what? That's an amazing idea. So that is what I'm going to do today. Now, disclaimer, I literally love every single palette in this ranking. So just because some of these are low down does not mean I like them. It's just because there are a couple of reasons why maybe I don't like them as much as the top palettes, and I will tell you why. So all of these palettes are palettes that I absolutely adore. I think that these are all so good, and I would honestly recommend every single one of these. But I will just tell you why they are ranked where they are. I will have a number on the screen so that you can follow along with how many I have here, because I haven't even counted them. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So technically 11 because 2 of them are going to be in the same spot. And I feel like that is a good kind of number to have for a ranking video anyway. So I think we're just going to go ahead and start on the bottom. Now, this is a palette that I think the reason why this ended up so low down, there's a couple of reasons. So this is one of the pop-up palettes from Shine by SD. I don't think that this is actually available anymore. It may or may not be. They have a couple of these pop-up palettes every year, it seems like, and this is a all shimmer kind of like iridescent palette, and I really like the idea of this, but I feel like some of these are a little too chunky to be like highlighters for the face, and since I have all of my other iridescent highlighting palettes that I like to use on my face, I tend to just reach for those for like my face and my eyes. If I need an inner corner shade or I need a brow bone shade, I tend to just reach for those because they're like right in front of me and I use them every day. And I also feel like this, for being a 6-pan eyeshadow palette, is just a little too bulky. Like it's just a lot. Like it's a big palette for just 6 pans, and that annoys me a little bit. But the quality of these shadows are really, really nice, and I need to put this like on my desk in front of me, but again, it's just like it's kind of big and bulky, and so it's sort of just in the way, whereas I could put like 2 smaller palettes in that spot instead. I don't have like all of my makeup in front of me, obviously, just the things that I know that I like to use on a very regular basis, and I feel like this is just kind of too big to like make it fit in there, but I need to make it fit because I really want to use this palette more because I do think it's beautiful. The next palette is a palette that there's only one reason why this is so low down, and this is the Man I Love Frogs palette from Drizzle. Now, I love all of the shades in here, but as you can see, I don't know if you can properly see that, there's literally oil seepage like pretty much on the whole palette now, and it looks kind of gross to look at. Like it's really all over all of these 6 shades, it's on these 2, and it just looks meh. But I really like the shadows in this, but because of that, it's such a petty reason. I know, like I said, I like all of these palettes. I think the quality of all of these palettes are really nice. But since I do have to rank them, and I do have to have a reason for where they end up where they do, this is the reason why this ended up where it did. And it's just because there's oil seepage all over it, and I don't like looking at it. But like I said before, it is a really nice palette if you want it. I do think that they have sort of fixed this issue. I haven't had as much problems with this with their newer palettes, just something to keep in mind. And I know they sold some of these who had this problem at a discount before, so again, just something to keep in mind. Maybe just look on their website and see if they still do that. The next 2 palettes are also from Shine by SD, and these are collab palettes between 2 Instagrammers. One which is Monica, which I really like. This eye look is actually an Instagram collab with her, so I will link her down below if you want to go check it out. But these are the palettes that they did together. So it's the As Above palette and the So Below palette. And these are all shimmer palettes. They're 6 pans. As you can see, these also have a little bit of seepage like going on the sides here. And I feel like with these kind of like very creamy formulas and these very wet looking shiny shifty shades, it just tends to happen a little bit. But the reason why these 2 are kind of low down is I feel like a lot of these shades look very similar on the eyes. You can probably tell they're all very like pink based, so if I had to choose one palette over the other, I'd probably choose this one just because I feel like it's more versatile. But there's a lot of very similar kind of overlapping shades in these that I feel like if I were to travel somewhere, I probably wouldn't bring these as my shimmers, just because I would like to have more variety in 12 shimmers than I feel like I get with these. But they're still beautiful shades, and if you wanted them, I'm pretty sure they sell them individually now, so I would recommend just picking up like a couple of these. Maybe you don't need all of them because they are, number one, expensive, and also, like I said, maybe a little bit repetitive. The next palette is a palette that I've had for a very long time, and this one ended up really high in one of my rankings the year where I got this palette. This is from Enchanted Luster, and honestly, I forget the name of this palette because it came with a sticker, and the sticker was kind of peeling on the edges, so I just kind of ripped off the sticker because I thought it was really annoying. I don't think this is available anymore. I promise the shadows are fine. They're very sturdy, so I'll show you the palette. Here's what the palette looks like. This is a beautiful palette, but I do feel like some of these shades aren't my favorite formula. Like there is sort of one that's kind of like flaky, you know, the ones from Copacetic. I don't get along with that formula personally, so this is like a flaky shade, and this one feels very dry right now actually because I haven't used this palette in so long. I don't know how this would perform anymore because like I said, I haven't used it in so long, but I did swatch some of these other shades and they're really, really pretty. And I do like this palette. I think it is really nice quality. I enjoyed it a lot when I first got it, and it makes me want to dip into it again because some of these shades are just so insane and so pretty that I want to slap them all over my face, but obviously I can't do that right now because I've already done my makeup. But this is a beautiful palette, and I'm very happy I have it in my collection, even if I haven't really reached for it in a while, but maybe it's time. The next palette is a palette that I felt like almost got a little bit buried in my collection, and I sort of forgot that I even had it because sometimes I tend to store like my favorite palettes like together, and I hadn't put this palette in the same shelf like on my bookshelf as the other palettes that I like to reach for on days where I'm not filming, and this is a palette from Lethal. So this is an all shimmer palette that it didn't come like this when you bought it, but you could buy it as a bundle in an all shimmer palette, and this is how they sent it to me, as an all shimmer palette. So I will just show it to you. I don't actually know the names of any of these shades, but I do think that you can buy this as a bundle in a palette. So I will try to link all of these palettes that are still available down below if you want to go check them out. But honestly, these multi-chromes are so good, and I forget how much fun I had with this palette until I saw it, and I need to pull this out again because there are so many fun shades in here, and these iridescent ones up here are like chef's kiss, so good. They're honestly perfect. I love them. And also this middle row of shimmers here are also just so nice, so I really like this palette. The next palette is also a 9-pan palette, and this is a palette that I brought when I went traveling earlier this year. I brought this along with another palette that I will show you later that is also in this video. This one is from Unearthly, and it's the Don't Be Jelly palette. Now the reason this didn't end up higher is because number one, it's a 9-pan, and there also are a lot of very deep shimmers in this, which normally aren't my favorites, but I just think that the formulas in here are so wonderful that I don't even care that a lot of these are kind of dark, and the fact that I brought this traveling means that I brought it with something else that I could use to lighten it up with. And I just had a really good time playing with this palette along with other things, and the shimmers are so beautiful in this. Like they are so metallic and so wet looking and so shiny and so shifty, and just like, I can't even explain to you how pretty these are. You almost just have to see it for yourself because these are amazing, amazing shimmers. And if you like this color story, if you want to have a good all shimmer palette, definitely look into this one because this one is a winner. Next up, we have a palette from Sugar Drizzle again, and I think this is my favorite Sugar Drizzle palette, at least all shimmer wise. This is the Sugar Dreams palette. So here's what I mean about I prefer lighter shimmers over darker shimmers, and this is basically an all shimmer pastel palette in a way, and I just think that these are so pretty, especially the shade up here. I hope I don't have anything else on my finger, but this one is so blinding and absolutely stunning, and I love that shade with my entire heart. This shade is so pretty too. It's so icy and so kind of like, oh, shiny. I love it. So this is a beautiful, beautiful palette if you have been looking for some lighter shimmers. Next up is a palette that have been a favorite of mine for a very, very long time. I do think this is still available. This was, I think, the first all shimmer palette that I got into my collection, and this is probably what started my love for all shimmer palettes, and this is the Break the Rules palette from ItsBel Cosmetics, and it looks like this. As you can see, this palette is used and abused. I almost have pan in this one. I have pan in this one. I almost have pan in this shade as well. This shade is beautiful. Honestly, all of the shades in this palette are so pretty. I love this palette so much, and I will continue to love this palette until I don't anymore, which who knows when that will be, but this is going very strong still, and it's been like 2 years now, and I feel like that says a lot. There are very, 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 very few palettes that I reach for over and over again over a time span of 2 years. Like, I can't even tell you probably 5 palettes that I have used like on a consistent basis that are that old. I do feel like though the next palette here on my list is a palette that is going to end up being one of those palettes that I reach for a lot, and this is the Angles of Illumination 3 palette from Belle Beauty Bar. This is a very, very new palette, and I just reviewed this. I did 4 looks in that video, and I still want to play more with this palette because I think it is stunning. What I love the most about this palette is, for me, the longevity with these shimmers are actually really, really nice, and I didn't experience a lot of creasing and fading with these, which I do sometimes with those very, very creamy formulas. But even though there are some creamy formulas in here, I just felt like the wear time with this palette was a little bit better than some of my other palettes. And also there are a lot of very light shades in here, which I love. This one is a beautiful face highlighter. So is this one. This one is such a beautiful sheer kind of, it's almost like it's a highlighter, but it has a little bit more of a blue base to it, and it just adds such a nice kind of shine and sparkle, and it's just so pretty. And this shade down here is incredible. Like, this is a really, really nice all shimmer palette as well, which, I mean, like I said, all of these palettes are beautiful palettes. And the last 2 palettes, I thought about bundling them together because they're kind of the same thing, but honestly, I do like one over the other, so we're going to start with this one. This is the All I Ever Wanted Volume 2 palette from Unearthly Cosmetics, and I think the reason why this palette, as well as the next one, just ended up on top is just because there are so many options. Like, I just have so many shades in here, and I love pretty much every single shade. There are a couple of shades in this palette that I haven't used yet just because it's a big palette and I only have 2 eyes. And there are some shades in here that I just color-wise don't really care for. So like this shade I don't think I've used. This shade I've maybe dipped into a little bit. I'm pretty sure I've used all of the other shades in this palette. Maybe not on their own, but like paired with other things. And I love this. The longevity with this palette is also really, really nice, and I appreciate that. This is one of the palettes that I've definitely done a 3-look video with, I'm pretty sure. And then I think the palette that ended up being the #1 palette here, which is the original All I Ever Wanted palette from Unearthly. This is also a palette that I brought on my trip traveling earlier this year. I was gone for like 2 weeks, so I brought quite a few things, but this, along with, what else did I bring for my shimmers? The other Unearthly palette, the Don't Be Jelly palette, I think those were the 2 only shimmers that I brought like total on my trip, and I used them so much. And I think what I love so much about this palette in particular is that there are 3 iridescent shades in here, which means to me that for me this is a standalone palette when it comes to shimmers. So if I were to bring the Blends palette from Blend Bunny, which is pretty much what I did on my trip, like these 2 together, it would be all that I need, because I have all the mattes that I need, I have all the shimmers that I need, I even have highlighters for my face. This is a beautiful, like sort of pinky iridescent highlighter. It is so pretty on the face, and I used it so often. And I also have 2 other inner corner shades here, or brow bone shades, or highlight for the face shades, and it just, everything performed so well. I love the color selection in this. I love this shade right here. Like, this is just one of my absolute favorite kind of shimmers these days. I just think they're so pretty. And I don't think there's anything I would change about this palette. I think it's just such a well thought out, and I get that this was like volume 1 because they probably put a lot of thought into this, making sure that it was super versatile and could be used in a lot of different ways. And I feel like they nailed it with this palette. So if you've been looking for an all shimmer palette, I would say get one of these 2, whichever color story speaks to you the most. They might be having a Black Friday sale. I'm not sure when this video is going up, but if you can get these on sale, these are quite expensive. I want to say they're $80 each, but you also get a lot of eyeshadow, and you get a wide selection of eyeshadows. And getting one of these is a lot cheaper than getting single shadows from indie brands. But I do want to just give an honorable mention though to my Clionadh Stained Glass collection, because if I were to include these in this video in all shimmer palettes, like these would be on top. Honestly, I think that my Clionadh shadows are just the best that I have in my collection. I think that there is just something so special about my Clionadh shimmers Firstly, they wear beautifully on me. They never crease, they never wear off. They just look incredible all day. And the selection of shades and just the nuances in all of these colors, there's something just, like I said, so special about my Cleona shadows that I would pick these probably over all of my palettes that I have in front of me right now, just because I've also spent a lot of money on these. Like, I've bought pretty much all of these myself. They have thrown in like a couple of shades as PR when I've made my orders, but most of these I've bought myself, and I treasure them because to me they're just special, and I love just opening this palette and looking at it. But if you want like a pre-made palette, you don't want to spend that much money on getting individual shades and having to pick them out yourself. Like I said before, get one of these. I don't think that you'll regret it. I think that they are beautiful palettes, and I think if you had them, you would really love them too, because they really are that good. So I think those were all of my shimmer palettes. I'm trying to like put this back without it falling down, and I can't seem to hit the edge of that little thing that I put it in. Anyway, I think that if you are like me and you'd like to do your makeup like me, and maybe you don't own any all shimmer palettes yet, maybe look into getting one, because they are honestly so fun to just pair with other things in your collection. And you guys know I'm not someone who does all shimmer looks, like rarely ever. Like, it does happen once in a blue moon, but that is super rare. And so I just like to mix and match these palettes with other things that I have in my collection. I think that is the best way to use them. Were you surprised by my rankings? Were there any palettes that you thought would end up higher or lower? Let me know. Do you have any of these palettes? And if you're like me and you have a lot of all shimmer palettes, which ones are your favorites? Because I'd love to know. I'm sure that if I had like the Ness and Myrick ones, like those would end up pretty high. And there are obviously, you know, palettes that I don't own that I'm sure I would love if I had them. So let me know which ones you have that you love, and maybe I'll look into getting them, because you can never have too many shimmers, right? So that's going to be it for today. If you want to see some more ranking videos, I definitely have a playlist. I'll put that right there. And if you are new, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.